Okay, for some of you, this will be new information, and for some of you, this is information you've already heard from me. But in every class, I always introduce the idea of game mechanics because we're not in a linear program. The IIP program is actually a very nonlinear program. So certain ideas I repeat in every class, and this is one of them. So Chris Crawford was the very first game designer to write a game design book. It was published in 1984, and you can go buy it still. He worked for Atari, and he also started the Game Developer Conference. And I put a link to his website there because he has a lot of ideas about game design still today and has a lot to teach. So I would encourage you to go explore that. So Chris Crawford has these laws on software design. He has identified games for him are software. So it's always software development centric from his point of view. So the number one thing you do is you ask, what does the user do? And these are his words. He says, the point and purpose of all software is interaction. Software with no interaction is useless. Software with strong interactivity is preferable to software with weak interactivity. There are a number of essays I have written on the importance of interactivity, and you can go explore those on his website. Interactivity requires that the user do things. The things that the user does are specified as the verbs in the design. Thus, the verbs define the software. The verb list is the fundamental architectural document for software, comparable to the blueprint for a building or a schematic for an electronic circuit. So, when in doubt, shoot the programmer. It says this is only partly tongue-in-cheek. Programmers make software come alive, and good programmers accomplish wondrous feats. But not all programmers are competent, and all too often they take shortcuts, especially with respect to user interfaces that cheat the user. Almost everywhere I look, I see software with mistakes, largely due to poor programming. Now, I would add poor design as well. He alludes to it when he talks about the user interfaces, but I think a really good design and really good programming do make a difference. Law number 3, people, not things. He says this is specific to games. Games are all about things, not people. You shoot things, things shoot at you. You chase things, things chase you. You pick up things, drop things, move things, blow up things, but it's always things. There are no people in our games. There are vending machines with faces plastered onto them. You have to figure out the right thing to say, the right gift to offer, the right coin to put in the slot, at which point the vending machine spits out the vorpal blade, the location of the castle, or the magic spell. But entertainment is about people, not things. Have you ever seen a movie without any people? Can you imagine a novel without any people? Can you imagine reading The Nobody of the Rings or watching a movie about that nobody? Until we get genuine, dramatically interesting characters into our games, they will remain bloodless exercises in hand-eye coordination and penny cognition. So much of this class, the way that I've designed it, is going towards these dramatically interesting characters in our games. But not just characters, stories and things to do and new mechanics. So number 4, if you don't know where you're going, you probably won't get there. He says, too many people think incrementally. They think about in terms of what already exists or how they might improve upon it. I'll make a game like God of War, only bigger, with better weapons or bigger explosions or ... right? These people go through life looking down at their feet, thinking only about where to put their foot next. If you want to actually get somewhere, you have to look up, scan the horizon, and find a mountain that you want to climb and go there. Or my way of saying this is, premise is key. Knowing who you are is imperative to knowing where to start. So Crawford was also the first to suggest that games could be more in his 1992 Game Developer Conference presentation that was titled The Dragon Speech. So, rule number 5. It's always more complicated than you thought. All of your knowledge is just an approximation of the truth. You can memorize pi to 10 decimal places, but it's going longer than that. Even if you memorize pi to 100 decimal spaces, you're still not getting it right. You'll never know the true value of pi because it has an infinite number of decimal spaces. The same thing goes with everything else. You think you know games? Ha! There's always something new about games that you didn't know. Whether it's cooking or economics or programming or sex or politics, reality is more complicated than you thought. The best you can do is improve on your current knowledge. And rule number 6, think numerically, not Booleanly. So for those of you who do not know what a Boolean is, in programming, there is a type, a data type called a Boolean, and that Boolean is like a light switch. It's on or off. It's true or false. It's what we refer to as thinking in, what are they calling it now? Thinking in binaries. So we no longer have binary genders, right? As an example. But this is what he's talking about. So he says most people, almost everybody, persist in thinking in simple-minded black and white terms. The world is not black and white. Everything is in shades of gray, and you have to think in numeric terms to perceive those shades of gray. As the second greatest physicist in history, James Clerk Maxwell, put it, the logic of this world is the calculus of probabilities. So Chris Crawford was also the very first person and game designer who suggested that the basis of an activity should be described with verbs. So stop this video and go look at that video for the first 3 minutes. This is where he talks about using verbs to describe game mechanics. And yes, it was recorded at AC West in the CLCC in 2012. So Chris Crawford influenced Matthew Weiss, and he is a game designer and a writer and co-founder of Fiction Control. His work ranges from experimental games in academia to AAA titles. He's worked as a consultant for Microsoft, PBS, and others. He was a game designer, director of Gambit at MIT for a while, and he's currently working on a game project he's not talking about. But I want you to go look at his 2-minute video on verbs and mechanics and learning how to use them to begin your game design. And there's the link to his 2-minute video that I want you to watch.